Hey, can we just go straight into this? We've got something that combines both sides of the news that we need to cover today. So can we
Yeah.
just, let's just say for everybody out there in the audience, Disney is not selling Star Wars. Disney is
What?
not selling Lucasfilm.
Okay. Yeah. Let's
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 so
let's
let's
hit
get
that
into it.
first. Yeah.
Okay,
Let's
so there
hit
was
this
an
first.
article in Bloomberg, right? And the article in Bloomberg said that Disney was thinking about potentially, they're mulling it over. They're talking in the C-suite about selling some of their properties. And by that, it means movies and TV shows. But
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean selling the studios. It doesn't mean selling them so that they're now
Correct.
exclusively owned by somebody else. It means selling those shows the same way that Sony sells their movies to run on somebody else's streaming platform for a year. They're
Yep.
not saying that Star Wars or Lucasfilm are going to be sold from Disney. We got
Correct.
lots of big news we're going to cover, but we need to go ahead and nix that one.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And look, I'm not trying to pick on anybody out there who and I look, I don't know
No, great
anything.
respect to all.
I absolutely not. And I didn't even know about this or see the story until you mentioned something that there was some misinformation out there. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know anything about it, but again, I guess some people have been mentioning it. So yes, Pro's absolutely right. And what that Bloomberg article was discussing is exactly what we've been talking about here on Valiant Renegade for months, if not a year or whatever. Like, especially since Zaslav came in to Warner Brothers back in May of last year, April or May of last year. And on his first earnings call, he started talking about with Warner Brothers that there's basically just a lot of dead property on their streaming service, right? They have a huge library of content that's sitting there on HBO Max that's getting nothing. There's no views on it, or almost measurably no views on it. There's no reason for it to stagnate on that service when they could take those shows, they could take that property, and they could do one of two things with them. They could either A, farm them out, license them out to a third-party distribution service, right? And let, for example, Netflix air some classic Warner Brothers content on Netflix or Tubi or whatever. Or option two is that Warner Brothers would create, and of course they're still looking at this, they would create their own 100% free streaming service that would be completely ad-based, and that they would put a lot of that dead library content onto.
Sounds a lot like Disney Plus.
That's exactly what Disney's looking at. And that's what I've been saying. We've had this conversation. Script Doctor and I have had this conversation over on Midnight's Edge. Tom Connors on Midnight's Edge. We've all talked about this before. This is nothing new. Is that eventually Disney's going to have to make the same pivot with the portions of the library that they have on Disney Plus that are gaining no viewership traction, especially now that they have launched their ad-based tier, folks. That's the driving force, right? That's the catalyst to doing this. That's what's going on. They have to, if they can't sell advertising on it, then they can't have it on the advertising tier. It can't sit there with its thumb in its butt doing nothing. So they're either going to have to make a free Disney Plus, which is what I would do, right? I want a gateway drug, right? I want to have a streaming service that's 100% free, call it Disney Plus free or whatever, I don't care. Put all that library of content that doesn't get much stuff on there now. Let people watch it, and that's where you drop very cheap ads. Hey, we got so much more.
It's going to be a Star Wars streaming platform. All the new Star Wars you could ever want.
Right. Well, they're not going to put Star Wars. Star Wars is the only thing holding Disney Plus together right now besides Marvel. There is a 0.0% chance that Disney is going to.
I think Disney Plus is held together with duct tape and Encanto. That's what I think is gluing the whole thing.
And Bluey. Don't forget Bluey, man.
Oh, yeah, a little Bluey on the side.
Yeah. How much of that release schedule right now on Disney Plus would they lose if they did not have Star Wars on the streaming service? And the fact that they would have to write their own reverse content licensing deal, it just doesn't work. Also, a lot of that Warner Brothers content we've found out will be on Roku and Tubi, all that stuff that has disappeared. Warner Brothers has inked a deal there for most of that to appear there. It's not saying that Max or whatever they end up horribly naming their streaming service is not going to have everything after season 2 of all of those. But yeah, the odds that Disney sells one of their properties that they have massive theme park investment and capital expenditures into, they're just not going to do it.
0.0% chance. 0.0. I mean, I can't speak for what's going to happen 5 to 10 years from now. But as of right now, is the Walt Disney Company actually looking at liquidating Lucasfilm or Star Wars and selling the hell to the no? No, not happening.
We've got plenty of other news, though, that's going to be just as big as if they did that. It's just that thing's not on the table.
Yeah, no, it's not. I mean, even if, and look, and let me stipulate, Pro, since you brought this up, I want to make this bonkers clear for everybody out there watching. Even if, okay, even if Disney licenses out, which would be a good idea, even if Disney licenses out Mando Season 1 to Netflix, even if Disney licenses out some old, I mean, like, you know, what was it? WandaVision. Some of these other Marvel shows. They're sitting there on Disney Plus right now getting nothing.
Cobwebs. They got cobwebs.
If they can license those things out for a few $1 million or a few tens of millions of dollars, then they should do it. That only makes good business sense. But that does not mean that they're selling the IP, they're selling it away to somebody else. That's not going to happen.
Right. If WandaVision shows up on Tubi, Tubi didn't buy Marvel. That's what we're saying here.
Jay is in the chat causing a ruckus down there. Drunk 3PO is here.
That scoundrel.
That's okay. And Jay, actually, when we get to the Star Wars topic later, Jay knows he's got an invite. I'm going to send that when we get to that point. I know Jay's saying, let me, I'm going on record to say this panel is wrong. They'll be looking at offers. I'm sure they can take offers for Star Wars all they want. But part of the thing that Pro was discussing earlier is that, they have so much invested in this. They can't just put what they have set billions of dollars into, almost maybe 10 billion at this point. They cannot then just sell it away to somebody else, because then they could potentially lose control over time of that.
Well, so here's what could happen. I don't mean to cut you off there, but here's why it's exceedingly unlikely. And let's put the caveat on that anything is possible. Disney could sell Mickey Mouse to Romania tomorrow, and we'll all be like, what? Disney sold Mickey Mouse to a second world country? What? All right, let's deal with that. But in all likelihood, were Disney to sell either Lucasfilm or Star Wars, which it's hard to imagine those not being bound together. But if they were to sell that, then they would be in a situation in Disneyland the same as they are with Marvel and Disney World, where they can't do anything with Marvel east of the Mississippi. Disney would not want to be in a situation where their most premium real estate in Disneyland is tied to a franchise and a property that they no longer have access to. That would be a horrific situation for them.
Yeah.
And that property is worth over $1 billion just in the CapEx funding to put that Galaxy's Edge in there.
Yeah.
So they certainly don't want to have to, remove it or anything like that. I mean, we're nowhere close to that. So I don't see that as being a possibility. When we were dealing with the rumors that Disney might spin off ESPN and ABC, which, by the way, those are huge amounts of money. But if they were to do that, that has a greater chance, in my opinion, than Disney selling either Lucasfilm or Star Wars.
Yeah.
It also runs counter to Iger's legacy, which he's going to hold on with a clutched fist until he dies.
That's it, right there. And that's part of the reason that, the news that we got earlier, and it's beyond, trying to think how to say this. It's beyond just Disney at this point in terms of where that has gotten out into the ether, which is how it came to us, at least partially. And
which one are we talking about there? Are we talking about the Star Wars stuff?
Or talking about the Star Wars news.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they would not be investigating this years out if they had intention to sell it tomorrow.
Let me say this too.
They're making a concerted effort at this point to salvage what they have all these sunk costs into. This is why they're going in that direction, and we'll talk about that more later. But